Hello, people of the internet. Have you ever looked at a Dart code like the one displayed on my screen and wondered what's happening? In this video, we are going to break down what anonymous functions are, why we use them, or how they work as callbacks, and how you'll see them used in Dart and Flutter. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand anonymous functions, but you'll also understand what's actually happening when you write code like the one you see on your screen. So let's break it down. So the first thing that we're going to do, we are going to try and understand what an anonymous function is. But to start us off, let's write our main function there. So an anonymous function is a function without a name. So that's actually what it is. It is just a function that doesn't have a name. So in order to understand it, we first have to define a normal function that has a name, and then we can build from there. So let's say we have a function with a return type integer, and then we call it, the function name is maybe double number. Then we want it to take a parameter number. Then that function will returns the number times 2, like this. Now this is a named function, a function that has a name. The name is double number. So when we call this function, for example, let's say int result is equal to double number, then we pass in a value 10. Then when we print result now and execute that code, let's see the output in our terminal. It should not take time. Okay, let me run it directly. Let me just say that test that, like that. So when we execute that, you see it takes the number 10 and then it returns the double of that number. So it's 10 times 2. So that is a named function, a function that has a name. So what is an anonymous function then? An anonymous function is one that doesn't have a name. So in this case, if you want to make this function anonymous, the only thing that we need to do is remove the name like this. We just remove the name like that. And that now becomes an anonymous function. But you have to terminate it with a semicolon there. So now this becomes an anonymous function. So the question lies, what is the difference between an anonymous function and a normal function, and what is the use cases of each? Now, the only time you'll need a named function, a function with a name, is when you want to use it more than once. So you see, in this case, if we change this one to result 1, like this, then we can use this function twice. We can say int result 2 is equals to double number, then we can maybe supply 30. Then if we decide to print result 2 now, we will get those two outputs. Let's run that. Now you see we get 20 and 60. We are reusing this function. So at any point in your code, when you are writing a function and you realize that you're going to use it more than once, then you need to give that function a name. But if you, at any point you write a function and you feel like this function, I'm only going to use it once, and I'm not going to use it ever again, then in that case, you need to use an anonymous function. I hope that's okay. So now let me show you the syntax of an anonymous function. It is not different in any way. The only thing that you need to do is you remove the name of the function and its type definition, and right there we'll have an anonymous function. I hope that's okay. So when we want to use an anonymous function once, when we want to create a function that we only use once, then in that case, we are going to use an anonymous function. Then an anonymous function can also be called a callback function. It can also be called a callback function because you supply it. Usually you see like this one here, we can't use it directly on its own. So we need to use it inside another function. I hope that's okay. So let me try and demonstrate that. Let me try and demonstrate the use of an anonymous function. So let's say we have a list, or maybe name, a list of strings. Then we can call it names. Maybe languages. And then we pass the language one, maybe Python. We also pass that. Then we can also pass Java there. Then maybe we can also pass Kotlin. So this is a list of languages. So an anonymous function in Dart and Flutter, usually we use it when we call the .map method. That is like the best explanation that I can give for it. So I'm going to do that. So I'll say maybe, let me call var, then I can say uppercase is equal to languages dot map. So if you hover over dot map, you'll see it takes an iterable. Its type, the dot map is its type is an iterable, and it takes a parameter of the type function, which takes a parameter string. Okay, so what we are trying to say here, this dot map method, it takes an anonymous function, because you'll see something defined like this inside it. You'll see this and then this, you see. So this is basically, and this is the definition of an anonymous function inside it. So such that here we can pass in number, or we can just pass in language. We can pass in language. Then now, what do we do with that language? We want to do something with it. We can say language dot to uppercase. Language dot to uppercase. So this here is the anonymous function. This here is the anonymous function. It doesn't have a name, yet it takes a parameter and then it executes the body. Because initially, in our previous function, we had something like int number, and then we had a body that was being executed. So this is an anonymous function. We have taken this same thing here and applied it inside this .map method. So .map method takes a callback, which is an anonymous function, and converts everything to uppercase. So when we print, when we print uppercase, what do we get? Let's run that and see. So we need to reload that. Let's reload and then print. We get an iterable that has the value null, 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 null. Now, why is that the case? Now let's see. Now the reason why the output gives us null is because we have not returned anything. Remember, in our function, we were returning a certain value. So even here, we need to have a return value. So we need to return language dot to uppercase. So that's the reason. Even in our definition of a normal function, we were having a certain return value. And also in our anonymous function, we need to have this return value. So because we were not initially returning anything, that's why the output was null. So if we run this code again, we will see now it prints everything. It prints everything in uppercase, Python in uppercase, that in uppercase. So the aim of this video was to explain anonymous function and its use in .map method. Okay, so what is the use of .map method? The .map method is used when you want to manipulate a given value. For example, we have this iterable here, which is a list. It is a list of values like this, a list of values like this. So when you want to transform these values in a certain way, maybe you want to turn them to uppercase, maybe you want to look at their length, you want to transform them in a different way. So that's when you use the .map method. It's almost similar to a for loop, but its use cases are a bit specific. You use it when you want to transform a given value. So var uppercase languages.map, then it takes an anonymous function here, then we return languages to uppercase. So you see now we've transformed every element in there. And the type here, it's of the type iterable. It's of the type iterable. And that's why you see it's enclosed inside that. It's not a list. It looks, yeah, it's not a list, it's an iterable. So something that you can iterate through, maybe using a for loop and such kind of technique. So when you want to convert it finally to a list, then at the end here, you need to do dot to list. So we need to change this one back to a variable so that we don't get errors. So at the end, you call dot to list. And now finally, our values will be now a list strings still because it is string, capital letters. So let's run that. So see now it has moved from being an iterable to a list like this. So now we have a list of those languages. So I hope that's correct. The next thing that I want to discuss with us is how you can shorten anonymous functions. So instead of having this return statement here, you can shorten it in a different way. So let's rewrite that. From here, we had languages.map. Then inside map, it takes an anonymous function. This is our anonymous function here. Our anonymous function takes a parameter, just the same way we were using the first one. It takes a parameter. So the parameter that we want to give it is language. Then now, instead of using the curly braces and the return statement, we're just going to use this shortened syntax to indicate returning. And when you use this shortened syntax, you remove the curly braces and also you remove the return keyword. So now we're just going to do language dot uppercase dot to uppercase like that. And then finally dot to list. So let's see, okay, at the end we need to have this and then finally this. So this is the shortened syntax of an anonymous function here. So this is the shortened syntax. Instead of having curly braces and the return statement, so this one will still give us the same output as we had before. So let's run that. As you can see, the output is still the same. So I hope that's okay. The next thing we want to do is make a comparison between a for loop and the dot map method. So if we remove this, if you were to use a for loop, then we would say for string language, in languages, then we can do something like print language. So this one, what it will do, it will iterate through the list and then print every value that it finds. You see it go, it looks for, it iterates, and for the first iteration it finds Python, then it follows with Dart, Java, and Kotlin. So under what cases would we want to use a for loop, and under which cases would you need to use the dot map method? Now, as I said, if you want to transform the values, the elements of an iterable such as a list, you need to use the dot map method. But if you want to maybe just show the values that are inside that list, then consider using a for loop. In the previous example, we wanted to transform our list from lowercase to uppercase. Another thing that we could do, we could still say var. Then now we want to look at the length of every variable, of every element in that list. So we'd say var length is equals to languages, then dot map. Now we want to transform the values in there. Then we will provide our anonymous function. It doesn't have any name. Then we will give it a parameter. So the parameter that we give it is language. Then we'll use our shortened syntax. What do we do with that language? How do we want to transform it? So we want to transform it in a way that we say language dot length. Now that will give us the length of every element in that list. Then finally, we want to store those value of lengths inside a list, which means here we finally now have a list of integers. Why? Because this one will go through this list, and we want to transform the values that are in there in a way that finally this one will give us the length, this one will give us the length, this one will give us the length. So when we finally print length, we will have a list of integers. So now we have 6446. So we could still do this operation using a for loop, but when you use a dot map method, you clearly state your intent so that when someone is reading your code, it's clear that this person wanted to go inside this list and then transform every value in a way that we can understand. So in Flutter, this kind of syntax is useful. For example, when you are consuming APIs, and also even in widgets. For example, if we have a list of these languages here, and then we want to display them inside a widget or inside a column widget, okay? So what we would do, we would basically do almost the same thing that we did here. We would just say, so instead of having this, actually, let me rewrite it. So let's say we want to display these values inside a certain column widget. So we would say list. Now it will be a list of widget, but currently I'm on that. So that won't work as we planned. But what I was trying to say is that you could use the same concept when building widgets in Flutter, because if now this one will be list of widgets, and then you will give it a name, then you would iterate. Then now for every element, you would now return a widget. For example, you can return a text widget, and then inside it you pass this value, and then you give it to list. Then now you can call it inside a column widget. So I hope that point was understood, and that's it for today. We just wanted to explain these 2 points. And as always, if you find value in the content that I'm giving, please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment. And if you have any question, you can share them in the comment. That's all for today. See you in the next video.